Hi, I'm Jim W6LG for Ham Radio Basics. Welcome to my radio room here on Wolf Mountain. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's kind of windy, but it's a pretty day. Been asked by a number of people to do a video, to do a continuing video on DXing and in particular pileups. So let's first define my definition of a pileup is a bunch of guys calling a DX station, and it may be 5 people, it may be 500 people. Oftentimes you don't know, you can just hear a lot of voices calling. The DX station may be in Europe, or it could be me. Sometimes I'm on 20 meters at night, there's hardly anybody on from California, but the band is open to Europe. I generate a pileup of Europeans calling me, and so I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of it, at least a little bit of it. But I've had certainly a lot more experience calling in the pileup. So how do you get through a pileup, and what's the process? And the answer is, first you have to listen, and then you have to listen some more. And there's lots of reasons to listen. Number one is, where is he listening? He may be listening on his transmit frequency. He may not be. He may be operating split frequency. So, for example, on 20 meters, the DX station may be transmitting at 14,190, and he announces that he's listening at 14,200 to 14,210. So, in theory, you need to call between 14,200 and 14,210 because that's where he says he's listening. I say in theory for a reason I'll get to in a second. If he's listening on his transmit frequency, then really listening very closely to what's going on can pay big dividends. So you want to know what his pattern is. And by that I mean, the DX station, oftentimes a whole bunch of people call and all he hears is noise. It's just all of those voices are jumbled together. And as the pileup kind of thins out, as guys stop calling, you may be able to pick out a call sign or two out of the group, out of those who are calling kind of at the end of his listening session, or listening time. So pay attention to what he's doing. Is he responding to the strongest station, like is right off the bat, is he working somebody? In other words, he says QRZ, the group starts to call, and right away he comes back with a call sign. Or is he delaying 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, picking out one of those outlying call signs that comes kind of late in the pileup, and that's the guy he's working, irrespective of how strong that person might be, or that signal might be. So you need to listen. Is he operating split frequency or simplex? What's his pattern of operation? Is he listening and grabbing the first guy he can hear, or waiting for the pileup to kind of thin out and then picking out a call sign? Also, occasionally you'll hear a DX station who says, okay, that he's listening 14,200 to 14,210, but in fact, as you go up to 14,200, again, that's part of listening, and you try to find the guys that he's working, you need to go above what he says, because he may in fact be listening on 14,215, and he may be saying he's 200 to 210, but he's working guys on 14,215, so that's where you need to call. By listening, I also mean that if he says he's listening 14,200 to 14,210, you want to see if you can find the guys that he's working. So spend the time, see if you can hear them. So he calls W6XYZ, and then you find W6XYZ is on 14,200. And the next guy he works is also on 14,200. And the next guy he works is also on 14,200. You know where to call then, probably 14,200. Or he may work 4 or 5 guys on one frequency and move up or move down depending on where he is in the band. So it helps to hear 4 or 5 contacts and see which way he's going. Another pattern of operation by some guys is they'll just work one guy and move up because they know it's going to be a mess. So might work one guy at 14,200, next guy works as 14,203, next guy 14,205. If you hear that sort of pattern, then you need to get ahead of it. So if you figure every time he's jumping about 2 or 3 kilohertz, you need to go 2 or 3 kilohertz above the last guy that he's working. Calling in a pileup, especially when it's all on the same frequency, if your call sign is particularly long, and some of them are, you may want to abbreviate your call sign. So, for example, my first call as a general licensee was WB6JZC. Now, that was a tough one. But in pileups, I would often say Zulu Charlie. And that would be it. So, as the pileup started to thin out, I would stick in Zulu Charlie. And the DX station comes back to Zulu Charlie. My current call sign, W6LG, sometimes I just say W6, W6. If the DX station hasn't worked California, but he's working mostly East Coast, I might say W6. And that's all I'm going to put in, because it's just going to be a quick call and what I think is a break in everybody calling. I hear a bit of a lull, W6, and hoping that he hears that. So we've talked about listening, and then listening some more, trying to figure out the guy's pattern. Timing is crucial. It really is. What's his timing for working guys? Is he really dragging it out, waiting till the pileup really thins out, and then working a relatively weak station? And sometimes that's the case. So you need to figure when do you stick in your call sign. It's likely that to give your call right off the bat. So he says QRZ, bam, you call. You may not be able to get through. There may be 50 guys a lot stronger than you, but if you wait until the pileup starts to thin out, you may be able to be heard. And again, the length of the call is really important. If your call is WX6, WXYZ or something, just try Yankee Zulu. If you're, let's say you're W7, maybe you just try W7. It helps to shorten the call. He may get just a portion of the call. Now, some DX stations wait until they hear the entire call sign. Those are kind of rare. Another thing about phonetics, and I heard this the other day, and this was, it was strange. DX station comes back to a guy. There were just a couple of guys calling, and his call sign was like something like W5HCC, and that's a tough call sign for sure. So he says, Whiskey 5, hot cup of coffee. Well, the DX station may speak very limited English or almost no English. He may have enough words to carry on a contact, but he really doesn't speak English. He may be able to say 5 by 9. I can do that a little bit in Russian with a cheat sheet, but I don't speak any Russian, so I can say a few things, but beyond that, no. So if you say to me in Russian, UA3, hot cup of coffee, I'm not going to know what the heck you're talking about. So don't do things like that. So, like JZC was my old call sign, Japanese zebra colony. It sounds stupid, but people do things like that. And the DX station will hear you, but not understand what you're saying. So it's better to stick with phonetics that work. So my call sign is Whiskey 6, Lima Golf. And I tend to use that one because it's short, Lima Golf. And again, in giving my call sign, I might say 6 Lima Golf. Now, I will identify with my complete call sign during that pileup, but there's going to be a lot of times where I might just say 6 Lima Golf, and the DX station comes back to, who's the 6 Lima Golf? Pileups. You don't necessarily want to be involved in pileups, and one of the things that I do is listen a lot, and I would recommend that you do that too. So let's say there's a pileup on 14200. The guy was on from Iran EP2A, and he was working a lot of guys on 14200. Well, that's your opportunity then to ignore that pileup, because a lot of guys are down there, and start tuning the band, listening for something else, somebody else that might be calling CQ. And that guy might be in the same region. You can hear the guy in Iran, maybe you can hear a guy in Kuwait, or a guy in Oman, or a guy in Qatar. And so you start tuning the band up and down, slowly, listening for accents, listening for what sounds like DX. And then you might find someone like OK1RZ, RQ2RZ, calling CQ, and bam, you can call him and work him because there aren't all those guys calling that normally would. They're all down the band working, trying to work the Echo Papa 2. Also, timing is really, really important in terms of propagation. So let's say I'm on the West Coast and I hear guys in the Midwest giving the DX station 5x9 and he's only S3. Well, there's no point in me calling. He's not going to hear me. If he's S3 with me and he's S9 with the guys in the Midwest, that means I'll likely have to wait till propagation shifts west. And if he's going to be on long enough, he may do that. He may peak up to S9. So I'll generally listen for a while and see if his signal strength is building. Also, if the DX station is working a guy on the East Coast, and the East Coast is saying, well, the East Coast guy is saying, you're 5.9 plus 20, and again, he's only S3 with me, there's no point in calling if there's a whole bunch of guys calling him. You're just not going to get through. The guys on the East Coast are going to be dominant. They're going to just cover you up and you won't be hurt. He may say, as he finishes his contact, okay, thank you, Jim, nice to talk to you, 73, and he stops transmitting. Well, that may be an opportunity for you to stick in 6 Lima Golf before everybody else keys up. So you need to listen, and if at the end of his contacts he's not saying QRZ, but he's just stopping transmission, then as soon as you think he's let go of the microphone, stick in your call sign. The same tricks kind of apply on CW, and that is if you can find the guy that he's working on CW, try to find a series of guys he's making contact with. It's not always easy, but okay, he's working this guy here, he's working this guy here, I'm going to get above that and call. And oftentimes that works great. Sometimes in CW he may be listening 5 up, and he's just working one guy after the other on the same frequency. So there you go. That's where you're going to call. But again, if you have, let's say, not the biggest antenna in the world, and you're not running an amplifier, avoid the pileup, find your own DX, tune up and down the band, look for something that's fairly rare. If the band's open to Iran, it's likely open to some other place, or if, let's say, the guy's on from England, Jersey, that's fairly rare. Well, there might be other stations on from that area, from the United Kingdom, that are just as rare. I hope that helps. I'm well over my time. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section. If you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm going to do some more about DXing, which is lots of fun. And again, listen and listen some more. 73 from Jim W6LG. Thanks.